Welcome to the Bootleg Baptist Podcast. I am Pastor Nick Staley. I want to give you a little insight today. I'm a pastor at One Life Church, I'm also a board member for our ministry called One Life for Life, which is our ministry to abortion clinics, where we've seen over 400 babies saved in 4 or 5 years now. Whatever it is, a number of years. We've seen a lot of babies saved, and in so doing, every year we do a fundraiser for it. And my friend here, Mike, came to it. You came to it this year, right?
Yeah, it was this most recent one, yeah.
And heard some of the stuff we were doing and thought it was really cool, which I obviously find it cool anyways, myself, because, anyways, it's part of a ministry of my church. But he was telling us some stuff about finances and ways that people can give to the ministry, different ways. In this conversation, I found myself going, whoa, I've never heard this before. And just the idea of what he's going to present we're going to talk about it pertains to every believer. I believe it does. It's a good way to handle your money, and it's different things that I've never heard of before. So Michael is a financial advisor, is that correct?
Financial professional is the term that they prefer. Yeah,
married, 2 kids, little kids, little kids, not
little
like mine
kids.
And what's the name of the business? It's
we call ourselves Stewardship Financial, which is a really good term for someone who is a believer. Mm-hmm. The phrase stewardship is very. It really brings to mind a lot of Christian thinking principles.
Yep.
Stewarding your money, yep. Being not only smart with your money, but godly with your money.
Yeah, using it to glorify God.
Yeah,
that's the key.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, money's just a tool. It's not
exactly.
It can be obviously sinful,
exactly.
But it's really a tool to be used. It's something God gives us, and we're here to give back to Him and use for His glory.
Right.
Because He provides it, which is
right.
a blessing. So what I want you to do, Mike, is, and just so you know, too, below, or if you're listening to the podcast, there'll be links in there to all of his stuff, because you'll be able to connect with him if you really feel like it, or if not, if you have somebody you're dealing with, by all means, go to that person. No big deal, but he's really available. He can do this in a lot of different states too. What he's capable of doing, and if he can't help you, I'm sure even a phone call, he could probably steer you to somebody who can help you on it, even if you're outside of his league, outside of his area. So explain. Okay, so I was an electrician. I'm used to pensions. I'm used to 401ks. These are kind of the big, and Roth IRAs. These are the kind of terms and things that it seems to be pervasive. Big word. I just used the word. Pervasive. From what people know of, like, this is what you do. This is how you invest for the future, for retirement.
Exactly.
But you, which in our conversation we had, it blew my mind with something I'd never heard of. So I guess first question I have, let's talk first about like IRAs. Let's set that up. Like,
right.
Why are like IRAs and maybe, I don't know, 401ks are probably in the same boat.
Sure, yeah, they are.
Bad investments. First. I mean, not necessarily bad, but just not the best investments.
So I'll kind of get into a little bit of some historical context there, and I wouldn't really say that those things would be bad investments, but that there's depending on your goals and objectives, what you want to do with your money, there might be other things that you could do that are a better fit.
Gotcha.
Because depending on someone's again, it's a case by case basis.
Sure.
Being a financial professional, we really do put together personalized recommendations for somebody. So we don't really have a cookie cutter approach, but at the same time, there are benefits that other financial products have that IRAs and 401ks do not have.
Right.
And if somebody values those benefits over what a 401k or an IRA is able to do for them, then the option over here would be a much better fit for that person. So the biggest problem is that if you're only told about the IRAs and the 401ks,
yep.
But in your heart you want these benefits over here, once you find out that there's a financial tool that can do those things, it's like one of those light bulb moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that
existed,
that there was a financial product that could do those things.
Which is what happened to me.
Right.
Like, I was mind blown.
Right. And kind of how IRA and 401k came to be. Well, really the 401k. I mean, the IRAs were around longer than 401ks, but the 401k initially started out as a bonus incentive for highly paid executives, like for a corporation to attract top talent. Because if you're an executive and you're making $500,000 a year and you're in the 40% tax bracket, and then you're paying state income tax, you're darn near giving half your money away to the government, between the federal government and the state government. Well, what some companies would do is they'd say, okay, well, we're gonna pay you still $400,000 or $500,000 a year, but we're gonna put 20% of your pay into a tax deferred account, and as long as you work for our company for 20 years, when you retire, you can get all that money, and since it's tax deferred, you're not going to pay half your money to the government in taxes when you retire from our company, and you take it out when you're in a lower income tax bracket as you're transitioning into retirement, you can overall pay less taxes. So what did that do? Well, for the company, it was a way for them to say, hey, we're still going to pay you $500,000 a year like everybody else is. But if you commit to our company, which means for the company's best interest, they're retaining that top talent to stay with the company.
Keeps them around.
Exactly. So it makes the person have more loyalty to the company. So it benefits the company. And at the same time, the benefit to the employee, executive type person is I can still make a really good income but pay a little bit less in taxes if I commit to the long haul with this company. So it was kind of like the initial way, or the initial purpose for the 401k was for a very specific situation.
Yep.
Bring in top talent, make them stay for a long time, and kind of help them with reducing their taxes
and future earnings.
And then they have retirement savings too. So it's. But what started happening at the same time was a lot of these companies with pension benefits were realizing that, oh, these people are retiring at 55 and they're living until they're 85, and they're staying on their pension income for almost as long as they're working.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to afford this? How are we going to stay good on our obligations that we made? This is bad. And there was a pretty famous case. I think it was U.S. Steel. And it was some steel company in the United States.
U.S. Steel is a big one.
Yeah, they were going through bankruptcy, or there was some kind of union negotiation, and the pension was a big deal. And
which it always is in
those
negotiations.
It always is, yes. And so they were saying, hey, look, we can't afford this. People are living to their 80s, where when we first set these pension plans up, the average life expectancy was like late 60s, early 70s. So they're living way beyond what we've planned. We can't. We either do something different or we're going to go bankrupt, and nobody's going to get a pension.
Right.
And so what they decided to do, oh, hey, we've been doing these 401ks for these top executive level people. What if we offered it to everybody? And we just stopped doing the pension altogether. And then that way, we can have people commit to working to the company for a long time still, because we're going to match. We're not going to give you an income, but we'll contribute a percentage of your salary to your account. And if you stay for X amount of years, you get your vest, kind of like with a pension, right?
Yep.
You work X amount of years and you're vested for your pension. Well, the 401k was structured very similarly. And so the whole idea of the 401k was to get the companies to kind of still offer some retirement benefit to their employees, so that they're not saying, okay, well, we're just not gonna offer anything.
Yep.
Because their competitor down the road will be like, well, we're gonna keep our pension, and we're gonna just hope that we steal all your top employees and they work for us for a long time and kind of boost up our solvency, and then you fail and we take all your business and it works out hunky-dory for us. So, in a competitive market, it was something that kind of, everybody else had to do, but everybody was struggling with their pension. So the 401k was kind of seen as the way out for a lot of these companies to get out of their pension benefits but still offer something. Well, the other thing that was going on at that time in American history is that the top marginal tax rates at the federal level were like 2 or 3 times what they are today. So for a good amount of people, it made sense to have a program that deferred your taxes until you retired, so that you're not paying those high marginal rates. When you're going into retirement, your income's a little bit lower. So over the long haul, the idea was you're going to pay less in federal income tax. Yeah. Well, what happened in the 80s, the Reagan era, and then about 20 years later, then George Bush. Yep. There were 2 big tax cuts, Reagan tax cuts and George Bush tax cuts. Well, if you compare taxes where they are today to where they were yesteryear, when the 401k was really coming out big time for everybody, now taxes are historically at a low point going back 40, 50 years. Really? So the top marginal rates now are way lower than what they were in like the 70s and 80s before the Reagan tax cuts. So, and then the other thing is that our federal debt is like huge. Probably 20 times what it was back then.
Yeah, if not more now.
Yeah, so right now you have taxes are historically low, federal debt is historically high. So, I mean, do the math. Where's that money going to come from? Like, the government, they can't print all of it.
Yeah.
They have to
They think they can.
Yeah, they think, but they have to tax some of it.
Right.
They can't just print it all, because then they'll destroy the dollar.
Yep.
So, the taxes are going to have to go up. They just have to. That's the math. So, if you're deferring your taxes in an environment when taxes are historically low, to withdraw your money when the government is in the process of raising taxes and bringing them higher, does it sound like a good idea to take a small deduction now only to withdraw the money and pay full income tax when the rates are probably higher?
Right. Not a good idea.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
You're going to give away a lot of that money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Unless you're in a very high rate. Like if you're someone who's making like $1 million a year and you live in California and you're giving like 51 cents of every dollar that you make to the government, it probably would make sense to defer a good amount of your compensation. But for the average person...
Yeah, which average person probably under $100,000
Yeah,
a year.
Yeah. I mean, the taxes are going to go up for everybody. The marginal rates for everybody before the Bush tax cuts and before the Reagan tax cuts were higher. Everybody. Every income bracket paid higher taxes. Well, when the government really needs the money and the debt is like 80 trillion or 100 trillion or whatever it's going to be in the future, and they need money
by next year.
Right. Yeah, by next year, who knows, right? But when they really need the money from everybody, and everybody has to pay higher taxes, and all of a sudden you have 500,000 plus in your IRA or in your 401k, and now you're taking that money out when you were in the 15% bracket, but now you're in the 20 or 25% bracket because the government raised the taxes on you.
You're getting nailed.
Yeah, you're getting hammered.
Yep.
So that's one disadvantage I would see coming down the tunnel of time for some kind of tax deferred program.
Something like that, where you're paying the taxes at the end, but you're going to pay it in a lump amount. And it could go up. I mean, being somebody that I still have actually part of a pension. When I was because I was a union electrician for a number of years, and I always remember guys retiring and like waiting for retirement until they were getting a top dollar, because one year they could retire and I'm just gonna throw weird numbers out there. You can retire this year and you're gonna, because of whatever percentage, I don't remember how it works, this years ago. You might get $3,000 a month.
Right.
But by next year they're expecting that to be $4,000 because but you're dependent on when you go out, and then all of a sudden if you go out and it's a low and it goes up, you pretty much lost all that money.
Right.
You didn't get it.
Right.
So it's the same concept though, because it's dependent on tax rates.
Right. Exactly.
All kinds of stuff, how that happens. So the same thing with 401k and IRAs too, right?
Yeah. So the other thing with the 401k is that how it benefited the company is with a pension, the pension is just an income stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're, like you said, $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month. The company is committing that, hey, you're retiring, I'm going to pay you $4,000 a month for the rest of your life.
Yep, exactly.
No matter what the stock market does.
$48,000 a year just for the rest of your life. So, you might get raises periodically.
Right.
You never get money taken away. It's always
right, exactly. But you can rely that you're going to, okay, well, the S&P, I'm watching the news, the S&P 500 just tanked 40%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. GM just sent me my $4,000 a month. Well, that sucks for all the people in the stock market, right?
Right.
Losing all that money. Good thing I have a pension.
Yeah.
Well, the companies,
they're losing money.
especially nowadays,
yeah.
with how much companies rely on their stock valuation for calculating their profit,
yeah.
and how much money the corporate entity is making, they rely heavily on how their stock is performing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if their stock is tanking and they're losing money left and right in the stock market, but they still have to pay all these retirees $4,000 a month or whatever it is, that eats into their bottom line.
Yeah.
But if they could say, we're going to contribute a percentage of your salary into this account. When you retire, this money is yours. You handle it.
Yep.
You're not our problem anymore. So now all of a sudden that person with the 401k has to be a good steward of that money, because that company is no longer going to give them an income
you're
stream.
done.
They're not going to give them a monthly check.
Yep.
So that person with the 401k could find, compared to the person with a pension where the S&P goes down 40%, they're still getting their $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month. That person with the 401k, when the S&P goes down 40%, they're like, oh my gosh, I just lost 40% of my money.
Right.
Now what
Just
do
like
I
that.
do? Yeah. So it really benefited the company in some ways, depending on your perspective, in some ways more than it benefited the employee.
Yeah.
Because really, what was the company trying to do? The company was trying to keep people from leaving by offering them a benefit, but do two things. Save money off of their pension, and put the investment risk on the employee, not the company.
Right.
So they were doing, their two main objectives was get rid of the pensions and put the investment risk on the individual, not us.
Yeah, so they don't have to hold on to it. It's your money, period.
Exactly.
We're just giving you some extra money.
Exactly. And so what people don't really understand is that, yes, and it's not like, hey, you get zero benefit out of a 401k. It's, some people, they can build up a pretty good chunk of change and have a good nest egg in their, as long as they regularly contribute to it. Like anything else, if you regularly contribute to, you're going to build up a good chunk. But at the same time, what a lot of people don't realize is that the 401k was really was really to benefit the corporate entity a lot more than it was to benefit the employee.
Yeah, to keep them around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And to get out of the costly pensions that were killing these big corporations,
which still are,
and still are, and to put the investment risk on the individual instead of on the company. Because when times are tough and the market's doing poorly, the company is also, people are buying their service or product not as much as they were before the market crash. And now we're getting hit twice. Where our stock price is going down, so we're losing money there, and people aren't buying as much of the things that we're producing, so we're getting hit there too. So that's kind of the gist, the like 30,000 miles zoom out of the 401k.
Yeah, historically, and here's where we're at.
That's kind of that's kind of the lens that a lot of that stuff kind of
helps to understand it, because
right.
we just think. I mean, we go without thinking. I mean, the company I work for offers 401k, and then they match it and so on. It's which it's good that there's something offered there, but at the end of the day, it's not. While it is good, like you mentioned, it is good. It's not necessarily.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, but there are better options. There are options out there. One that can be better, and two that may be completely better. You still don't realize was there.
Sure.
Because what we talked about wasn't.
Right.
So what Now you explained it was It was actually on the insurance.
It's an insurance-based investment,
savings, which is better. So explain that and kind of run through what you did with us.
Right.
The other church.
This is a way that a lot of Americans had saved traditionally for decades.
Yeah, like the last.
Yes.
Like I think you mentioned, insurance companies over.
Yes.
A lot of them are over 100 years old.
Yeah, and a lot of, and even just average Joe, mom, pop kind of individuals would put money away for a rainy day inside their life insurance policy.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until the things started to change in the 80s with the 401k, and most companies were offering it, and when you applied for a job, a 401k, okay, I'll sign up. They're matching, okay, cool. And there was a little bit of a shift of people's dollars into different financial programs. Just, if your job's offering it, the mentality was, well, hey, my company that I'm going to work at for the next 20-odd years is offering me this benefit, so why the heck not?
Yeah, right.
So,
makes sense.
Yeah, but before that, what a lot of people did, and still do today, was buy a certain kind of life insurance policy where, kind of like your home, when you pay your mortgage, you build equity in your home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the insurance world, they call that cash value.
Yeah.
So you build cash value equity inside your life insurance policy, and the insurance company pays you a dividend as long as the insurance company is profitable. And believe me, most insurance companies are profitable.
Yeah. Right, especially the older ones too, right?
Yes.
You mentioned that the older the better.
Right, and if there's two companies that you really just can't stamp out in the United States, it's the banks and the insurance companies. The banks and the insurance companies will always win. Mm-hmm. So there's a really good chance that your insurance company is profitable. And so when you're contributing to your life insurance policy, there's a good chance that your life insurance company is paying you a dividend on top of your premium that you're paying into the policy. And so those dividends, along with your contributions, build up to grow and to create a pretty good nest egg that you can tap into. And the dividends plus the money that you pay into your policy are completely tax-free. Not only income tax, but capital gains tax, which is another big thing that we're talking about in the news right now. Joe Biden was saying, a month ago or 2 weeks ago, that he wants to double the capital gains taxes. And he was saying that he was going to raise income tax to pay for this monstrosity infrastructure bill. He said, well, first we're just going to raise income tax on people making $400,000 a year. Well, now we're going to raise income tax on people making $200,000 a year. So, the bar keeps on getting lowered for who's going to pay higher income tax and who's going to pay higher capital gains tax. So that's another, in the context of what we talked about earlier with the 401k, with the tax environment being higher taxes back then than what they are right now, where right now there's conversation already of taxes going up in the very near future.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. I mean, we're
if we
funding
can
everything under the sun.
Exactly. So with the life insurance strategy, if you can put money into a program and put that money away at the tax rate that you're in right now, and build up a big pot of money that will be not only income tax free but capital gains tax free when taxes are probably going to be higher in the future, wouldn't that be better than deferring your taxes when they're probably going to be higher and you're paying a higher rate? It sounds to me like a no-brainer.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an obvious no-brainer.
Right. So that's one huge advantage that the life insurance strategy has over the 401k, is that the money inside your policy is if it's set up correctly, is income tax free and capital gains tax free. And then when you die and whatever money is left over, you leave that to your children or grandchildren, they inherit that money also income tax free. That does not happen with a 401k or an IRA. When you die and your children and grandchildren get that money, depending on how their income is and how much you're leaving them, they could pay a significant amount of income tax on that money because it's never been taxed yet. So say you have 2 kids and they're each making $100,000 a year, and all of a sudden you had $200,000 left in your IRA and you died and each kid got $100,000, now their income is $200,000.
And they're in a new bracket.
And they're in a higher bracket now, where compare that to a cash value life insurance policy, and you die with a $200,000 left in your policy, they get that $200,000 tax free, no questions asked.
It's theirs.
So they don't even have to worry about it. They don't even claim that on their income for the year.
Because it's a payout.
Because it's not income.
It's a payout.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a benefit.
Right, exactly. So there's tax benefits for you while you're still living that, in my professional opinion, are superior to a tax-deferred asset. And there are also tax benefits to your beneficiaries. And if you're saving money and putting money away for a rainy day, I mean, you don't know. You could retire at 65 and die when you're 67.
Right.
Or you could retire at 65, live to your 90, and spend every last penny on yourself, which is fine.
Right.
But if you had the option, if you didn't know when you would die, wouldn't you prefer that the money that you worked so hard for over the last 30, 40 years, or however long you worked, wouldn't you prefer that if I die tomorrow, my family gets my money, not the government?
Yeah, which I don't want the government.
Yeah, exactly.
I always think of when you say capital gains too, my brain always goes to there's an episode of Parks and Rec. Mm-hmm. If you've ever seen the show.
Yeah.
With Ron Swanson explaining to the little girl taxes. And he takes the end and says, oh, don't forget, capital gains tax takes a monster bite out of everything. And whenever I think of that, when you said that, I'm going, that's what I'm thinking of, and that's what the government does. They want to take the sandwich and just eat as much of it as possible whenever they can. If, like what you're saying is, what we can do is say, oh, here's the sandwich right here, government, but guess what? Hands off, because I've got a zapper over top of it. You touch it, I'm going to smack you.
Right.
It's kind of what you're getting at. We don't want them to get it. Obviously, we don't want the government to get our money.
Right.
Work hard for it. The Boston Tea Party was over a small tax.
Exactly.
And here they are taking a large chunk. This is a way to kind of separate and say, no, you only get you only get so much of my life.
Right.
And my beneficiaries, because we want to leave a legacy to our children.
Sure. And
children, if possible.
And some people will say, well, I don't want my kids to be millionaires. They'll be spoiled and they won't understand hard work. Okay, I understand that argument. And it's not that we want to make our kids millionaires and have our kids not pay taxes. That's a different argument. Whether or not is it better to have your kids inherit a lot of money or to earn their own money. I mean, you could make good arguments for either one. Yeah. You know, you could make a good case for either one. But the point is, would you rather, all things being equal, before we talk about is it better for your kids to inherit money or is it better for your kids to just earn it themselves, if it's your money, would you rather your family get it or strangers at the Internal Revenue Service?
Right. And if the answer is you want the strangers get it, you're a fool.
Right.
But if you're wise, you say, I want my family to, because it's a blessing to them.
Right. Or in the context that we're kind of talking about here, with stewardship of your money, okay, great. I understand you don't want your kids to be millionaires. I can respect that.
Yep.
You want them to earn it. Okay, fine. Don't leave them any of your money. Would you prefer to leave it to your church, or leave it to a charity, or
ministry, missionaries? There's all kinds of things, right? We want to
donate
this money.
Donate it somewhere. Leave it to, I don't know. Leave it to some kind of political, like whatever your political views are, some political action group, anything,
like hospital, or children's hospital, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? So if you don't have to leave it, if you don't want your children to have it and be spoiled rich millionaires, but you want to leave it somewhere else where you feel like that money would be more respected and minimize the chunk that the IRS would take from that money, I think that would still be a pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good investment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially as Christians, we believe that we continue while we die to be absent from the body, to be present with Christ. So we're present with Him in that moment. But to be able to leave a legacy, I think I'll just speak candidly. I think there's a level of the church, what it's done over the years, has gotten this idea that we're going to be raptured out and that this is all there is and everything's getting worse. So they don't think about the next generation. when the Bible is really clear about leaving a legacy, to our children's children.
Right.
And like looking at that and going, how can I provide for my children's children? Could be a huge blessing, and it's a blessing to the church as well.
Sure.
Because the churches continue on. I mean, man, we'd be fools not to go. We need to invest this money in our children. If you're honestly, if you're worried about your kids becoming spoiled brats, then that's your bad because you raised them very poorly.
That's another.
But that's another story.
That's another
topic for
that's
another
kind of
day.
my opinion on the matter.
But needless to say, if that's where you're at, then you need to really check your kids, look at your grandkids at least, and hope they weren't raised that way. Anyway, so continue on though.
Yeah. So, long story short, tax benefits in the cash value life insurance strategy, for many people, will eclipse what you could get out of a 401k, just because of the situation that we're in right now, the historical context of where taxes were in the past relative to where the national debt is today. There's a huge mismatch there. The math just doesn't add up. Yeah. So, tax benefits.
Unless you do Common Core math.
Yeah, right.
Then you can make it.
Yeah, then it can just be whatever the hell you want it to be. But so tax benefits are definitely front and center when you're thinking of cash value life insurance. The other benefit is kind of how I talked about a minute ago about putting the investment risk on the employee.
Yeah. With
the 401k, the company is no longer liable.
Yeah.
For
it's your problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the average person with the 401k, there's been surveys up the wazoo about this. The average return on investment is somewhere around between 5 and 7% a year, which isn't terrible.
No, it's not bad. Right.
Yeah, that's nice. But there's enormous downside. If your average upside is about 5 to 7% a year, tomorrow you could lose 30-40% of your money just because there's a correction in the stock market.
Yeah.
So there's tremendous downside.
Yep. It's volatile.
It's
the
very
big ups
volatile.
And downs. Yep.
And depending on where you retire in that peak and trough could more or less determine how the future of your 30-odd year retirement is going to go. And the guy who retires when the stock market's up here looks like a genius, right? He's like, wow, I was so good with my money. I had all the right things in my 401k. But the guy who retires down here is like, wow, what a scam. These 401ks are a ripoff. And, depending on who you are.
Right, and the time you retire, what the economy is.
Exactly.
If you're in the middle of a recession, it's not a good time to retire.
Right.
Unless, okay.
Right. So the other big advantage to cash value life insurance is there is no volatility.
Yeah.
It's not in the stock market.
Stable.
It's not in the stock market at all.
What's the average?
So the average dividend, this wouldn't be the average return on the policy. That's kind of hard to calculate but the average dividend is similar. It's the average company will, as long as they're a strong company, will probably pay a dividend somewhere around 4 to 6%,
which is
like
stable
that.
Though 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Because on a 5 to 7, it could be 5 to 7 this year, sure. But next year you could lose 10, and so now you've actually you had 5 to 7. Now to get back up to where you should be, you've got to get 15 to 17%
exactly
in the next year. And if it only goes up 5, I gained 5, and they think they gained it back. Reality is they lost 10.
Right.
They still lost 10.
Exactly. So the it's not gonna. There's a really good chance that in a cash value life insurance policy, you're not gonna make, 20% a year on your. It's not a get rich quick scheme.
Right.
It's slow and steady wins the race. You're putting money away tax free, which is huge. You're you're keeping taxes off your money.
Yeah.
Income tax, capital gains tax. The two taxes that you're subject to if you go out and make money. You can make money working with your income, or you can make money investing, and you're going to get taxed on it.
Yeah.
Well, in a cash value life insurance policy, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So there's a huge advantage there. Now, with the volatility, it's slow, predictable, steady growth.
Yeah.
Now, if the insurance company does very, very poorly, they could not pay you a dividend, but most insurance companies with those kinds of policies do offer guarantees that are written into the contract. You're guaranteed to have X amount in your policy, which is comforting, because there's nothing guaranteed in a 401k. Nothing.
Right.
You could lose all of it.
Yeah.
So now, that being the case, you might say, well, I might be better off just rolling the dice and being aggressive with my money in the stock market, because if the upside is higher, hey, what the heck, if there's a few years I can make 10, 20, 25% on my money, it might even out to be a higher return than if I did the safe route with the cash value insurance policy. And there's a valid case to be made there. But at the same time, because you do have volatility in that account when you're retired, the volatility works against you. When you're working, the volatility can work to benefit you, because when the market goes down and you're contributing to your account, you're buying into the market when it's low, right?
Yeah.
So you're buying more shares while they're down, and then when they come back up, you make money.
Way more money.
Yeah.
Right,
So when you're working and you're still earning an income, if you're fortunate enough to not be laid off during one of those recessions, the volatility is good, because it's going to help your account grow faster. But when you're retired, you're not working anymore.
Yep.
So you're not earning an income.
You're just pulling.
Yeah, you're just pulling from your account.
Yep.
So when your account goes down, the volatility is bad.
Yeah.
So what someone who's retired has to be conscious of is, if they withdraw too much too quickly, they can run out of money.
Yep.
And be broke while they're still alive, and they may have to reduce their standard of living. Maybe they have to downsize and sell their house. Maybe they have a car that's like an everyday car, and they have like their sport car, Corvette or whatever that was
the
their
fun car.
Yeah, the fun car, and they got to sell that, or maybe they can't see the grandkids as much, or maybe they can't go on that Alaskan cruise because the stock market was rough this year. So you have to make all these just-in-case lifestyle changes because of the volatility on your money. And the safe percentage that most financial professionals will recommend you can withdraw every year without risking withdrawing too much too quickly is something like between 2.9 and 3% a year.
Yeah,
so
you can still make money.
Right.
You're still making percentage.
So if you withdraw 3% a year from your 401k, even when the stock market tanks, you're still probably not going to run out of money, even if you live for 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, if you have $1 million in your 401k and you're like, I have $1 million in my 401k, awesome. And then you're like, oh wait, I can only take out safely $30,000 a year. Otherwise, if we go in one of those downswings, I could run out of money.
Right, real quick.
So I have $1 million, but I'm only living on 30 grand.
Right.
And then I'm paying taxes on it.
Right.
So I'm not living on 30 grand. I may be living on maybe 25, 26, maybe, depending on what your bracket is. So that's the other advantage that a cash value life insurance policy has, is the taxes, number one. Number two is the volatility that no longer benefits you when you're retired. You have an asset that is not the value is non-correlated to the market. So when the stock market tanks and you lose half your 401k, you can still have an income. Oh, wait a minute. I lost half my 401k, but I have my cash value life insurance policy over here. So I'm still going to be able to see my grandkids. I'm still going to be able to see to go on my Alaskan cruise. I'm still going to be able to keep my Corvette.
Because that's stable.
Because that isn't touched. So my withdrawal rate can actually be higher than 3% a year, because I have this asset over here that its value continues to increase no matter what the stock market's doing. So instead of living on 3% a year, you could live on closer to somewhere between like 4 to 6% a year.
Yeah.
Because you have an asset that you can pull from
That's stable.
alongside your volatile assets.
That's stable.
Exactly.
It's not, you know where it's going to be
Right.
tomorrow. It's not going to change.
Exactly. So those are the two main advantages that would benefit the common man is tax-free and no volatility.
Mm-hmm.
So the rate of return doesn't have to be as good because you're not paying taxes on it, and when you're retired, just because you have an asset that doesn't go down when the market goes down, you can withdraw a higher income from your overall portfolio.
Yep.
Because you have money that isn't affected by the down swings in the market. So instead of living on 30 grand a year on your $1 million, well, what if you could live on 60 grand a year just because you had things set up a little differently?
Slightly different, right? Because I mean, it's not a bad thing if your company says, "Hey, we're gonna offer you a 401k and we're gonna match dollar for dollar
Right.
up to X amount." It's not a bad thing.
Right, sure.
It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, take advantage of it. They're
Sure.
offering you money. Use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just be wise with it
Exactly.
because you can adjust it and whatnot.
Right.
But it would be, if they're doing that, it doesn't say just depend on that. Rather, you need to take your money and use it in different ways.
Right.
To benefit you in the future. And one of the really especially if you're working for somebody.
Exactly.
Because you're going to get that free money anyway. That's it. Really,
Exactly.
it's money they're offering you just to
Right.
shut up. I guess.
Yeah, and I'm a believer in that. If they're offering you a match, by all means, take advantage
take
of
advantage
it.
of it,
It's
right.
free money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If they're offering you
Yeah.
something, just take it.
Yeah,
and use
why
it.
not? Yeah.
If on the other hand though, but that shouldn't be your only
Yes,
point.
yes.
Especially in this end, you're really talking to a guy that's making from 40 to really that $100,000 a year kind of standpoint. You're
Right.
working for General Motors, you're working for Ford Motor Company,
Right.
you're working for you're a plumber, an electrician,
Right.
or whatever.
Right. Or even if you're an engineer and you're making
Yeah, if
90
you're-
grand a year,
Yeah,
or
right.
95,000 or 100,000 or 120,000.
These are good ways to take that
Absolutely.
money and use it to
Right.
send a legacy. Yeah, you've got your 401k
Right.
that's matched. Do it. Don't
Right.
neglect that.
Right.
Because you're not going to, if you don't take that money, it's just going to sit, they're not going to,
Yeah.
you're not getting it back.
Yeah,
anyway.
they're not going to give it to you in some
Right,
other fashion.
Right. So just take
Yeah.
advantage of that. But then
Right.
also look starting through this, it's not, what would we call it? It's not term life insurance because that's one term.
The main ones that I usually look at are either whole life, dividend
Whole
paying
life,
whole
that's what we
life,
used to.
or indexed universal life.
Gotcha.
So those are the two main ones.
Yep.
They have the most guarantees out of the other options that are available, and they have the most predictable growth.
Mhm.
And because at the end of the day, that's kind of what that asset is bringing to the table is predictable growth that's tax-free,
Yeah.
that doesn't have the volatility factor that other financial assets have.
Gotcha.
So my personal favorites are whole life, dividend paying whole life, and indexed universal life.
Yeah.
So
And they're easy. You can
Right.
throw it out, get involved with an investor.
Yes.
Financial, not advisor. what is it?
Yeah, financial professional,
Professionals can get
Yeah.
you into that. So now, one thing you mentioned was with those, there's a way to really give to, like, let's say, let's use our One Life for Life for an
Right.
example.
right,
So somebody could use that insurance policy also to bless a ministry.
absolutely.
How does that work?
So here's where it gets really cool and really creative is whether you're making an average respectable income or whether you're making CEO level income,
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. There's not an income limit. It's not a financial asset that only rich people can do, or it's something that can work for everybody.
Yep. From
No-
your
Right.
Walmart employee
Right.
to your CEO of Walmart.
So
Good
no
work.
no matter if it's in your heart that you want to bless a ministry, whether you're the plumber making 40-50 grand a year, or whether you're the CEO of Walmart making millions of
Millions,
dollars a year, but you still have in your heart that you want to give back, that you want to follow Christ, and you want to leave as much of your
Legacy,
God-given
yeah.
talents
Yep.
to benefit Christ Church. You can use those kinds of life insurance policies in that way, and how kind of like a brief summary on how that would work would be, so the individual can take out a policy on himself
Yep.
or herself and contribute to the premium.
Mhm.
And when that person dies, he can name the the institution who he wants to leave the money to, the ministry who he wants to leave the money to, as the beneficiary. So when he dies, the institution gets that money from the policy tax free.
Yeah.
So
Boom, there it is.
boom, right there. It's a check.
Yeah.
It's not a mutual fund where we need to figure out how much it's worth because the stock market just went down. We should probably call the financial advisor. How much is in our mutual fund now? It's not real estate. Oh, well, we got this big property that was willed to us, but
we gotta sell it.
Now we got to appraise it. How much is it worth? We got to sell it now. We got to maintain it. We got to get a realtor. Because really, the institution at the end of the day wants the cash. Because they want to use the cash for what their mission is.
Right.
So that's a huge advantage there is when the person dies, it's just cold hard cash that you get to do whatever you want with, no strings attached, tax free.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. And the individual paying the premium gets to write those premiums off on his taxes as charitable contributions.
So going through
So say he's paying, let's say he's putting $10,000 a year into this policy.
Yep.
And he gets to say, oh, well, I gave $10,000 to charity.
Yep.
And so his taxable income gets lowered by $10,000. and the institution owns the policy. So while the cash value is growing inside that policy all those years, if the institution wants to take out money early, maybe they want to expand. And they're like, well, you know, we appreciate you doing this policy for us, but we want to buy a new building and
the money's there.
You're really healthy. You're probably not going to die for another 10 years or so. I mean, we're happy that you're alive. We're not like, we don't want you to die, but we have this cash value here. So we're just going to tap into the cash value right now.
Yeah.
Well, the institution can do that, tap into the cash value while that person is still living, also tax-free. So the gentleman contributing to it gets to lower his income by $10,000, hypothetically in this example. $10,000 a year, right off the get-go, is not taxable because I donated that to charity. And then the charity says, oh, well, we see an opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, and there's an opportunity to do it now. Oh, we have this cash value in this guy's policy. We're going to take some of that out right now and go spend it right now. That's also tax-free for the entity. And fast forward a few years, when the gentleman dies, the entity gets all of the money tax-free. So tax-free for the individual, or tax deduction for the individual on his premium commitment, tax-free access to the cash value in the here and now for the institution, and a tax-free endowment lump sum when he dies in the future.
Yeah, whatever's left.
So tax-free, 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 tax-free.
Right. Let's say I want to give. Let's do it for a second. Say let's use that guy as an example. $10,000, and I want to give, a third of it to. I'll say a third of it to my one kid, a third of it to my other kid, and this other third I want to give to the church. Let's use a church as an example, because most people, actually probably everybody watching this goes to a church. I don't tend to attract the heathen.
Right.
Let's be honest. The pagans don't care about this.
Right.
But so I want to do all three. That's possible too. Now I can take. Is that possible? I guess. Can you take now a third of that? Would you give? So $3,333 can be tax write-off.
Or yes, that's a good point. So let's say.
So I split it up because I'm getting more than. Let's say I'm. I mean, some people give $40,000 a year towards it.
Sure. Yeah. Let's say he
wants to give part of it.
Yeah. Depending on this person's objectives. Let's say he has a $10,000 commitment. He's like, hey, Mike, I like the stuff you're talking about. I like how this policy works. I want to leave some to my kids, and I want to leave some to
the church.
My church.
Yeah.
So it would make more sense to do two separate policies.
Okay.
And he says, my commitment is $10,000 a year. That's how much I want to do.
So
okay.
Split it into
let's do 5 for your family, and let's do 5 for the entity because of the tax situation, the entity would have to be the owner.
Gotcha. So
that's how he gets a deduction, because since he's relinquishing ownership rights to the policy, and so that's how he can say, well, I'm not getting a quote unquote benefit to this money.
Yep.
I'm giving it
fully
to the entity. So the entity would own it entirely. So if I'm going to have a 10 grand commitment, but I want to have some go to my family, well, then let's do however you want to divide it. I mean, he could do 7 for the entity and 3 for his family.
Or 5 and 5, whatever.
It's however you want it.
You make that decision.
Yeah, it's a case-by-case basis. But
so you can still use this to bless your family in the future and bless the church in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, especially a guy that's, I mean, if you're able to give, if God has blessed you and you're making a lot of money, and you're able to go, you know what, my kids are still going to get a huge chunk here, but I can also benefit my church and benefit myself in the here and now.
Exactly.
It makes sense because, you know, people obviously they tithe, they give to their churches, and that's, we use that as a write-off to lower our tax bracket. But this is an incentive, and it's also leaving a legacy to the church where it can help the church or whatever entity it is to continue on and continue its mission.
Right. It's definitely a long-term play, and kind of like we're encouraged to in the Bible is to be ready. Death comes like a thief in the night. So
absolutely.
if we're prepared for a long-term play to take care of the ones left behind when we check out of this physical world, if we can better prepare the families that we leave behind and the institutions that we leave behind who are still here on earth, I mean, it could be the different. Maybe the church gets this hundreds of thousands of dollars from this individual, and because they have that money, maybe they're able to open up a new church and evangelize and save more souls.
Right.
Bring more souls into Christ's kingdom. Just because I died and left some money and empowered my church to
continue going. To
continue going more effectively. And in this world, it takes money to do that.
It does, right. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Right. But all money is Christ. All money is a blessing from God. That's what it is, and it's to be used for His glory. Again, going back to what we originally said, it's tool.
Right.
It's in and of itself. It's like the argument of guns.
Right.
Guns are wicked. They kill. But guns don't kill people.
Right.
It's the person pulling the trigger pull. And money is not evil in itself. It's an inanimate object. What you can use it for is evil, or you can use it for good.
Exactly.
And this is a way to really look at it and go, I can invest this into future generations. I can invest this that when I'm in glory, when I'm with Christ, it's irrelevant. What I left behind is still paying dividends to the church and is being used for generations to come.
Exactly.
And who knows how that goes.
Right. And it could be the difference because that individual could take $10,000 and just write a check to the church for 10 grand.
Yep.
And he would get a deduction for 10,000.
One time.
But it's a one-time check that church gets. Now, let's just, and I don't know off the top of my head, but let's just say, for example, that 10,000 buys the individual a policy that has a death benefit of like $500,000, hypothetically.
Yeah.
I'm just making stuff up, but let's say that's the case.
Yeah.
So he can pay 10 grand a year into that policy and leave significantly more than just $100,000 or say he lives 20 years and he pays, $200,000 into this policy. Okay, well, would you rather leave $200,000 or $500,000?
Right.
Like, it's whatever institution is getting that money is going to get more than they otherwise would have in the long run if they have something set up like that.
Yeah, you're getting a revenue every 4% increase every year. I mean, things are making money. Now, the boomer generation, boomers, the boomer generation, I heard it not too long ago that is the wealthiest generation ever in America. They're the average, what I read was
likely
in
world history.
Right, average baby boomer at death is worth or at one point in life, I don't know what it is, was $1 million.
Yes.
In all of them, by and large, shame on the boomers because they all had like one kid.
Right.
Which is stupid, by the way. I'm just going to point that out.
Yeah.
If you're younger than that, like you have a bunch of kids. I've got a bunch of kids.
Right.
I've got a half a dozen. I've got enough to basketball team.
All right. There you go.
But, I mean, that generation has a lot of they have money that they're sitting on and looking to, I mean, in the last year, I know a lot, and you can see it because we're having problems getting people to work, and it's not just because of employment benefits.
Right.
It's actually because mom and dad worked. They've realized, oh crap, I don't want to do the Zoom stuff anymore. They retired during the I'm going to call it the shamdemic.
Yeah.
They retired during that time, and now they're
Scamdemic.
Right, scamdemic.
Yeah.
It's trash. That's another story. But
Yeah.
either way, they retired, so now there's a lack of people in the workforce. But those baby boomers are within the next. I mean, they were born what, 45-ish.
I think they call 46.
46
I think, to like 63.
Yeah,
I think.
somewhere in that range. So they're getting older, and they're going to pass on soon, and they're sitting on a lot of money, and they had one kid, and they could be using some of this money to expand the kingdom of Christ. I mean,
Yes.
to look at the Christ's kingdom is expanding, and you can use it for that end. So rather than just throwing this money away, you could really turn around and use it
Right.
to benefit the church, like right now too, especially.
Yes. And here's the big problem with the boomers is kind of how we talked earlier about the initial historical context of the 401k.
Yeah.
A lot of boomers have, and it's kind of hard to make a blanket statement here when it comes to money, but
That's okay.
But-
On my podcast, you can feel
Yeah.
free to make a blanket statement,
Yeah.
and I'll deal
I'll
with
be
it.
as
It's fine.
charitable as I can.
Yeah, it's okay.
A lot of boomers have most of their money in a tax-deferred asset, like a 401k or an IRA. And so that answers a very important question. So the IRS and the government, I mean, we can make jokes 6 ways till Sunday about how incompetent and how stupid the federal government is, which,
Yeah.
you could make a very good case for that.
Yeah, it's not hard.
But at the same time, I've been saying that a lot. At the same time, it's like, what is this? Is this guy's pitch or something? Is this what he says at the table?
No, it's
to
okay.
close?
We all have our
But,
little line.
yeah. So they're responsible for Social Security, and so they're conscious and aware of the mortality, life expectancy projections of the boomers, because they're paying for a lot of the boomers with Social Security, and also because they've been deferring a lot of their investment taxes for decades, and like you said earlier, a lot of them are getting older and passing away, and legacy is top of mind awareness. Legacy is also top of mind awareness for the IRS.
Right.
Do you think, if you're a boomer, do you think that the IRS doesn't know that you have X $100,000 in your IRA, and that when you die, that money can now be taxed?
Yeah.
Do you think the IRS knows
that
that you're in that situation?
Yeah.
And also, when the IRS knows, and these are actually the hard numbers, over the next several years, when the boomers start passing away, it's going to be the largest transfer of wealth in human history. It will be $70 trillion, and this is an agreed upon number in financial professional circles. $70 trillion of wealth will pass from the boomers to the millennials, to the kids of the boomers.
Yeah.
$70 trillion. Well, the federal government is like what, $30 trillion national debt is what it is, something like that, right? Well, what are they just gonna sit there and just watch? Oh yeah, well
we can just have it.
Yeah, you guys can just have it.
Yeah, no, they're going after.
We're cool with that.
Yeah, they're going after it.
They know it's coming.
They're gonna go hard after it.
Yes.
Too.
So they know this transfer of wealth is coming, and you already right now have Joe Biden, and it's not just Joe Biden; it's really all of them.
Yeah,
in
it's
Congress.
Senate, the Congress.
Yeah.
It's all.
They're all talking about we need to raise taxes on the rich. Well, if you're a boomer,
you're the rich.
You could have made when you were working. Well, I wasn't rich. I only made $40,000 a year. Yeah, but you made $40,000 a year and contributed $5,000 a year into your retirement account for 35 years.
Yeah.
So now, on paper, even though you had an income of $40,000 a year while you were working, on paper you have a net worth of over $1 million.
Right.
So you're the rich. Welcome to the team.
Right.
So if you're not thinking about, okay, when I die, I'm going to have all this money left over, who's going to get it? The government...
They're going to get what percentage?
The government
30%?
would prefer you to stay that way.
Yep.
Let's just say it as politely as possible. The government would like you to remain in your state of what's the right word? Negligence.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's probably a good word for it. Yeah. Because you're just neglecting the fact that
you're not taking the proper planning to transfer that wealth to the next generation in the most tax efficient way possible. And if you don't have a plan,
it's gone.
Not having a plan, by default, you do have a plan.
Yep.
If you don't have a plan for transitioning that money, guess what? You do have a plan. It's called the government plan.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll take it. They'll with their hands, the big smile on their face, saying, "We're here to help."
Yes, and your family, or your church, will not get what they could have gotten if you just took the proper steps with your own money. And all that takes, at the very least, have a conversation about it with a financial professional. And if it's not right for you,
it's fine.
And you have a cousin at the IRS who you want to leave a bunch of your money to, by all means. If that's your thing,
go for it.
Go, as long as you know what you're doing.
Yep.
All is permitted as long as you know what you're doing with your money.
Yep.
So if you're okay with it,
go for it. Right.
Go for it. But if you see the breakdown of, oh wow, this could significantly impact the inheritance of
my kids,
my community, my kids, my community. I kind of don't like that.
Right.
Then we should have a conversation.
Right.
But
it's worth it.
Yeah. But if you just don't care, as frustratingly many boomers do.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of them don't care at all. Then continue down the path you're going.
A question. So let's say I'm a boomer. I'm not. I'm technically Gen X, but just barely. I was born in '78. I'm like at the. There's a thing called Xennials. Which I fall into that more than I don't. I'm not a boomer. I'm not a Gen X. I'm not a millennial. I'm kind of in that middle.
Yeah, I'm a millennial.
Let's say I'm a boomer here, and I've got this money in a 401k hemmed up, and I don't have the insurance policy you're talking about.
Right.
Is there a way? And this may be a straight no answer.
Sure.
Is there a way to take that 401k and change it over to that?
That's a good question. So yes and no. So it depends on their income tax bracket. Mm-hmm. So what we would really have to be careful in. Obviously, we'd have to be working with a tax professional who knows their situation a little more deeply than I would. We would have to take an annual withdrawal from their 401k, and put that into the life insurance policy.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't for sure want to take it out all at once,
right, and drop it,
and
but
put
you
it
do it yearly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
there's a way to do it.
Yeah, there is a way to do it. So let's say they have $1 million in their 401k, and they want to take out a percentage of that every year, and piecemeal switch it over into something that's tax free that they can leave to their children, grandchildren, their church, their charity, their whatever they want to do, the hospital, a school, anything.
Not a government school.
Yes, private school. Yeah, key distinction. I'm glad you said that. So let's say they want to do that, and let's just say hypothetically it makes sense for them to take out the most that they can take out, given their tax situation, is without messing up their bracket and all that. Of course, at the advice of their tax consultant, tax advisor, CPA, or whoever they're working with.
But you could steer somebody to somebody good.
Yeah. And I could work with their tax professional
to
too.
Work all this out.
Obviously, this would be a team initiative. This wouldn't be like an adversarial thing.
Yeah, right.
So it would be. Let's just hypothetically say that number is $40,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Because they have $1 million.
Yep.
So $40,000 a year out of $1 million isn't really.
It's not much.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's say because of their bracket and because of X, Y, and Z, they can take out $40,000 a year and put it into this policy. Well, we claim $40,000,
mm-hmm.
and whatever their bracket is, they're paying tax on that.
Yep.
Whatever's left over after they've paid tax on that money, we can put it into the policy. So let's say they pay. Let's say $5,000 of it is tax. So you claim 40, we have 35 to play with. We're gonna put that 35 into this cash value life insurance policy for the next 10 years or the next 15 years or the next 20 years or however long it makes sense. And that way, as the years go on, we'll transition some of your money into a tax-free bucket, so that if you die tomorrow and the government takes a large percentage of your $1 million 401k, you will get, even if you've only put one annual contribution in your policy, you get the full face value of that death benefit. Even after just one annual contribution, which is huge. It's not like, oh, well, if I only put it into it, if I make a 10-year commitment, but if I die in year 2, do I get a haircut? No, you don't. You get the full value of that policy, which is good. So you can't lose. So if you're putting that percentage into it and you die the first year, your family still gets all the money. If you live for a long time and you kind of piecemeal switch percentage of your 401k over into this cash value life insurance policy just by doing annual withdrawals, you have a good amount of your pre-tax money switched over into tax-free money that you can use on you while you're still alive if you want to. Or you could just leave it there forever, and then when the good Lord comes knocking, just let it seamlessly transition over into your family
as a payment.
So you have options. You can, if you live a long time, when you're 80 and I don't know, maybe you got some health issues or you're going into a nursing home. Well, it's not like that money is inaccessible to you while you're still alive. So you could, if you have some kind of long-term care, maybe you get Alzheimer's and you need to go into a nursing home and it's $100,000 a year, and oh shoot, I have this going into my life insurance policy, and now all of a sudden I have $100,000 a year on my nursing care. You can still access that money and use it for you. It's not like it's locked up and you can't touch it.
It's still usable.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're a boomer and you want to do something like that, it would take careful case-by-case planning. But it's plausible. We could make it work. And as long as that person is insurable and they're healthy enough to qualify for the policy, it could make a lot of sense.
Because it could. I mean, let's say I worked at General Motors or Ford or one of the big three, and I've got a pension and I've got a 401k, and the 401k I really don't use.
Exactly.
This would be a good way to use it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm living off my pension. I've got my house paid for, my cars. I got a car payment. I've got my cabin up north, but I'm able to afford everything off my pension. This 401k I'm just leaving for my kids. They're going to get taxed on that quite heavily.
Exactly.
But if I take it out, it's going to become like an income tax, which is going to be less tax than probably a death benefit, like a capital gains tax would be. So I'm going to take that out here, and that now it's just income tax taken out. So now and I'm able to turn on and give it away to, say, a charity. Now all of a sudden I've cut a lot of the IRA. At least was able to take. They're still getting a chunk, but not as big of a chunk.
Exactly.
So I'm able to basically take, even though I made my decisions earlier in life have changed, somebody's not getting taxed 30-40% on this. Rather, it's an income tax which could be like 5%, anywhere from 5 to 10%.
Yeah, their effective tax rate might be a lot lower because we have a progressive income tax. So just because you're in the 22% bracket, that doesn't necessarily mean that your overall tax for the year is 22%.
That's just the bracket.
Exactly.
You'll still maybe get some of it back. Whatever. It just depends. There's a lot of things that go into that, but that's still a way to maybe sidestep it. If you're in that situation where you go, hey, got the pension, I'm living good, everything's right. I go to Florida, I've got my house paid off, got my camper, whatever. But I'm not touching this 401k. I plan on leaving it to the kids. You're better off, even if you're planning on giving it to the kids, to take it out annually, a percentage out annually. Take that little bit of a hit now, but your family isn't going to take that hit later. Or if you're giving it to your church, it's a way to take that money and say, the church is going to get it instead of the government getting it, majority.
And here's the thing that, and there's a lot of boomers who get really upset about this when they're in that position. The IRS literally makes you take money out of your 401k when you're 72 and a half. So if you're one of those boomers who you're mentioning, and there are plenty of people out there who are like that. They have a pension, they're on Social Security, all their stuff's paid off, the kids are moved out.
They're just living comfortably.
They don't need it. It's just extra. Well, joke's on you when you're 72 and a half, the IRS says, oh, you have this money in this account and you haven't paid any income tax on it. We kind of want some right now.
Yeah.
And so they literally make you take money out so that you can pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
And then you have to decide, okay, well, I don't want to take it out. They're making me take it out. I'd leave it in there if I could, but I can't. So
yeah,
why not do it? Why not do that anyway? Because there comes a day and a time when you have to take the money out and pay income tax on it. Well, they're going to make you take it out anyway.
Right.
And then when you die, they're going to take a big part of it. So why don't you,
before you hit that
even if you hit that, even before you hit that threshold, why don't you just, if you don't need it, if you're one of those people, why don't you just take advantage of the rates now while the income tax is lower? Let's say you're 65 and you're like, well, I'll just wait until I'm 72 and a half and they make me take it out. I'll just wait. Well, what if you're not insurable when you wait?
Right.
What if they raise income tax while you wait? Why
what
not?
If you pass?
Yeah, what if you die and it's
right.
too late? Let's take advantage of it now. Start taking small withdrawals now and move it from your left pocket that's fully taxable
yeah.
to your right pocket that's tax-free.
Yeah.
And you're not if you don't need it anyway, what difference does it make
right.
to you?
Yeah, you're actually leaving this legacy.
Right,
it's a way to really give a legacy.
Exactly.
Because like a pension, when you die, your pension's gone.
It's
nobody
gone.
gets
Yeah, nobody gets it.
It's you've paid in it for all these years.
Right.
You're all those guys that work for 40 years,
right.
retire within a year, die, and all that money
right.
they were given or
right.
whatever, all that money's gone.
Right.
The 401k, at least you can now take it and go, you know what? I'm not using it. I'm going to benefit somebody else with
right,
it.
exactly.
And that could be millions of dollars. That could be $10,000.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. The government's not getting as much now.
Right, exactly.
Upon your death on money that they would have got a very large chunk.
Yes, yeah, and they're just waiting. The IRS is just rubbing their hands together. They're waiting for this $70 trillion wealth transfer from the boomers,
right?
Who are just
they're just
blindly
rubbing their hands, going, all right, we're getting ready for this.
We're just wait for the payoff. Just wait for the boomers to die, and look at this whole COVID situation. The people who were most affected by it were the boomer generation,
right?
The ones who were older. They were the higher risk demographic who could get COVID and die. I mean, to your point of, well, you don't know, you could die tomorrow,
right?
I mean, there could be a pandemic and you could get sick and you could die. So why wait? Why kick the can down the road?
Yeah.
If you know you don't need it and you're already questioning the longevity, like, okay, what's going to happen to this money when I die? If that's a question that you've had, then it will be worth having a conversation about and at least seeing how the numbers fall, and then you just make the decision for yourself and your family.
Right. Yeah. I look at this and go, here's where I usually lose anybody that would normally listen to it. I go, okay, you can give your money to a government that doesn't know the difference between a boy and a girl.
Yes.
Doesn't know what marriage is.
Exactly.
Murders children.
Yes.
They invest money in murdering people overseas.
Yes.
All kinds of nefarious,
yes.
evil, wicked things are going to happen.
Yes.
And they're going to use your money to murder babies.
Yes.
Or would you rather give them as little as possible now that you're at that point where you go, oh, maybe I should do this.
Yes.
I want to make sure they get as little of that as possible
yes.
to literally slaughter little children in the womb. Instead, I'm going to take that and give it to a ministry like Our One Life for Life, or there's plenty of pregnancy centers out there.
Sure.
All these things are doing good work.
Right.
To give that to them, so you can say, I don't want to use this money to kill. Rather,
right.
I want to use this money to save lives, even upon my death.
Exactly.
I may die, but there could be boundless amount of children that's lives
right.
are saved. They hear the gospel of Christ and repent and believe on Him. Or I can
right.
give to the government who really wants to be God,
yes.
and they want your money, they want your tithe, your
yes.
offering, so that upon your death they can use it to continue.
Right.
So what do you? So the question runs to, what do you want to use your money for?
Right.
For benefiting a government that hates you, or benefiting
right.
a church that is there to save lives, or a ministry that's saving babies,
right.
or a ministry that's let's just be honest, a political. I don't consider myself Republican or Democrat. I consider myself a Christian. On that end, Christ is king. But I want to use this money to expand that kingdom, not this earthly kingdom
right.
that is really wicked and evil. And
yes.
I can speak on ours, on how wicked our government is and its religious system. But which would you rather do?
Right.
And that's what we're getting to is, man, you could use this money to expand the kingdom and look ahead at a legacy.
There's a choice.
Right.
You have a choice.
Yes, you do. You have this choice, and we've just been neglected it for years because we just haven't thought that way. We just think, oh, this is what everybody does. Instead of
Right.
going, no, everybody in the past did it this way, but we've
Right.
forgotten that because everything's so expandable. I mean, mind you, I work at a, I'm not going to name it, but I work at a major corporation in this world, one of the largest in the U.S., and they're not there for my benefit, and they're in the government's in their pockets, and they're in the government's pockets.
Sure.
They want to make sure whatever they do is benefiting the government too, because they get a lot of money from it.
Sure. It's a
so-
symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely. And if we buck that trend, now you put the money back in the church's pocket where it should be, which, there's been, you could say, there's been evil and wicked things happened with the church over years, and there's no doubt. But not like our government. Nothing even close to what our government
not
has
even
done.
close.
Not even close. So it would behoove you to partner with a financial professional to figure out if this works for you. If you're making $40,000 a year, if you're making $2 million, $3 million, $5 million a year, benefit, you can use this money for the glory of God,
Right.
or at least the legacy of your children, rather than the wickedness of man.
And a line from the Bible just came to my mind as you were just talking about that. What's the famous thing that Christ says about, and this is something that unfortunately a lot of Christians use as a justification for leaving your blood money to the government. I'm thinking, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and render to God's what is God's. Well, is that Caesar's?
Right.
Is Caesar entitled to your legacy?
Right.
Is that by default because you're a citizen of the United States?
Yeah.
Because of that, does Caesar have a claim to 30-40% of your life savings?
Yeah.
Is that rendering to Caesar what is Caesar, or is that rendering to God what is God's?
Right.
It sounds to me like it's flipped. So if you can change that dynamic and render more to God, because God is the master and creator of your life, and because God gave you the talent that you had to go out and earn and create that wealth, you didn't necessarily create that wealth on your own. You did that through God's grace and through God's providence blessing you and your family. So if God's blessing and protection guided you to create that wealth, does that not mean that you're disrespecting God by rendering more to Caesar than what is God's?
Right.
Shouldn't you take that to heart, that, wow, I was so blessed to be in a position to have a pension and Social Security and not need this money because I am so blessed financially and God blessed me with this. I'm going to leave it as much of this to God as I can. This is God's money. This is not Caesar's money.
Right. In that, when that happened, what Christ was saying was, he says, who's on it? It's a picture of Caesar, right? He says, render unto God that which is God, render unto Caesar as Caesar's. Sure, this coin had Caesar's face on it.
Right.
But what is imprinted, what is God's? It's man.
Right.
The image of God is stamped on man. And if we look at it and go, that money should be used for the legacy of God's, of man, the image of God.
Right.
Money is a tool.
Right.
It's not, that's what it is. So if when Christ was saying that, he was saying it's render unto God that which is God, which is the image of God, which is mankind.
Right.
What is your blessing to be able to do? To give that money, that tool, to your children who are created in the image of God, to glorify God.
Exactly.
That's where it needs to land at.
And there's also some context that the modern reader, the modern Christian was like, well, what's the problem with taxes?
Yeah.
There's context that they're forgetting. The Pharisees in that conversation were trying to trick Christ. They're trying to trick him and be like, aha, we're gonna catch him. We're gonna catch him saying that he's a revolutionary and saying that he's gonna overthrow the Romans.
Yep.
Or we're gonna catch him saying, no, give to the Romans because I'm meek and humble and I'm not here to start. So either way, we're gonna catch him saying, overthrow the Romans or give to the Romans, and we're gonna pigeonhole Christ into making him look like a fool.
Yep.
And that, so he knew, he's God. He knew what was going on, so he came back with a pithy response.
Right.
And it just so happens to be that depending on your sensibilities in that particular passage, you could kind of read into it whatever you want.
Right.
If you're a socialist, you can be like, well, see, look, Christ is a socialist. He says, render to Caesar's. What does that mean? Render to the state.
No.
Well, if in my view of the world, rendering to the state means 50% of your wealth.
Right.
Well, that's not what he was talking about in that.
Absolutely.
There's so much context that
really
is missed.
Poor understanding of Romans 13 is what happens, and the role of the government, and what the diakonesis or deacon, the deacon of the Lord is. They're punish evil doers. But even it's amazing how foolish we can be with that. I mean, think about this. God says 10% is the tithe. 10% of your wealth is to be given to, at that time, the temple, to the priests and so on. But a government that says we want more than 10% is saying they are God. They are saying they're claiming to be the deity.
Right.
Because we live in a religious system where we have a creation story with evolution. Right. We have a sacrificial system with abortion. We have our prophets being the scientists of the day. We have our priests being the politicians. We have our God being the overall government.
Right.
They're saying they're God. So the best way to get back at that is to say, no, you will not get more than I will do everything I can to not give you that amount of money and fight back against that system.
And there's legal ways to do
it.
This is not an illegal strategy. This is 100% legal.
It's within the bounds of the law that we have here, but it's a way of saying, no, I'm gonna step it away. I think it was Ron Paul. I love this quote.
Yeah,
he
I
said,
Ron Paul.
Don't steal. The government doesn't like competition. And that's exactly what's going on. They're stealing from us, so we're just going to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, and what we're going to do is use their own laws against them to make sure that they don't get more money than Christ does.
Right.
And my family does, that legacy that's created. I mean, if you could give away $1 million to your kids who are a part of the church and they're going to continue to tithe, continue to give, you're still leaving that legacy in one way or another. You're still doing that. If you raise your children to love Christ, to be in his church, to give to the church, to loving their neighbors themselves, you're going to take this money and use it to the glory of God. Man, give it to your kids and continue that legacy there, because they're still in the church and they're giving.
Yes.
But there's ways around this. That's what we're getting at.
Yes.
So this is a lot of information. Yes. It's a lot there. I'll put in the notes below and in this information to get to Mike, to talk to him if it's finding out how he can help you with this. If you know what, you're in a state where he can't help you, maybe he can at least say, hey, I'll do a little research for you, find you a guy that can help you with this.
Sure.
That's down there. But reality is he might be able to help you here and now, even if you're in, I know we talked before, like Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, I think you said, number of states you already can help in.
Yeah.
But there's more you can still do it in other states too. So you can bless him and his family to help that, because reality is it's going to help his family as part of his business.
Absolutely.
And you want to do that. If somebody works hard for you, they deserve it.
Sure.
So on that end, we want to make sure you're able to help him, but also help your church, help with ministry, help whatever that cause is that you're at. And if you're young, if you're a millennial or even younger, you can start using this and looking ahead at future generations. Start now, and look ahead. If you own a business, this is a really good thing. If you own a business, I imagine really good for business owners. But there's many ways you can use this. You're a baby boomer. Talk to them or talk to your financial professional and get involved in this. Find a way around giving the government all of this money. I'm sure that they won't like this because of that. But reality is this is all legal means. There's nothing illegal. This is all not going to throw you in jail over this. This is stuff that people that are smarter than you and
smarter than me.
Have figured out and have taught you to do and other people to do. It's there for a benefit, and you can use this to bless your church, to bless future generations. I mean, what an awesome thing this could be. I mean, the transfer of wealth, even if that $70 trillion number you put out there, let's say we don't give the government $3 trillion of that.
Yeah.
Glory.
Yeah,
that
can
is
you
a
imagine
wonderful
what
thing.
We could do with that?
Right. What could just think of your own church. What could your own church do with $1 million that was given?
Yeah.
I mean, what could happen? We live in Genesee County here in Michigan. My church is in Grand Blanc. I live in the city of Flint. What if we were able to take my little church and $1 million was given to it? What could we do with that?
Yeah,
man, I think
power.
It is absolutely, and we can actually affect more than just. I mean, people that are suffering, the poor wouldn't necessarily have to go to the government for the help. The church would have the money to help. That's really we that's another story.
And that's kind of why I think a lot of this is not really. A lot of this information is more or less hidden.
Yep.
Because if that were the case, where people were pretty profoundly taking advantage of this strategy, in a lot of circumstances, you could make the things that the government's doing redundant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, people are going to start asking, hey, we're using this financial strategy to protect the wealth that we've created, and we're using this, and it's really grown our charity, it's really grown our churches, and our community around us has transformed significantly.
Yep.
But we're still paying a lot in taxes. What is the government doing with all this money that we're leaving them when we don't need them?
Right.
And then people start asking those questions.
Yep.
And they start asking, why do we need you again?
Right. Absolutely.
And the elite don't want people asking those questions.
Right.
They want you to keep the mentality of, oh, well, they want
to keep you a slave.
They're helping. At least they're helping with rent subsidies, or at least they're helping with housing, or they're helping single moms buy formula. Like at least they're doing something good with the money. But when you find out how much better you and your community can manage that money than some faceless bureaucrat at the IRS.
Right.
And you start asking, hold on a second. We have taken financial steps to streamline this wealth transfer process and make sure that our institutions that we created grow and have steam in their engine.
Yep.
But we're still paying all these dollars in income tax, and we're not really seeing any direct benefit whatsoever.
Yep.
What's going on here? And even asking those questions is a threat to the people in power.
Right, and that's the way we put it. We shut them down.
Right.
Let's just be honest. I mean, Gal, can you imagine if there's a Christian school? I mean, a Christian school that is affordable, that is teaching scripture, that is teaching really classical education.
Right.
Can you imagine how that transforms a community in one generation?
Yeah.
I mean, 2 generations. It's an amazing thing. This is a way we can do it as a church to really see past a rapture mentality that everything's getting worse, but rather going, man, we're going to build a community, we're going to build things that can't be torn down.
Right.
That are opposing wickedness, truly. We're not just there to have VBSs, and we're using it. We're having places for homeless people to stay.
Right.
We're having apartment complexes for low income people where the church is taking care of them.
Right.
These are the kind of things we can do, but we've just completely neglected this for years.
Yes, we have, and that used to be the case before the welfare state. There used to be all these friendly societies, and the church used to have a stronger backbone.
The hospitals, why are they named after saints? Why are they named after Methodists and all this stuff?
Exactly.
But they're Baptist hospital and so on. They still have that name, but they don't have any of that backing. But we can start that again.
Exactly.
Because trust me, if the foundations crumble in America, and the church has actually thought ahead and said, you know what, the top foundations crumble. Yes, what will the righteous do? Well, if the righteous, like it says in the Psalms, if the foundations crumble, what will the righteous do? Well, guess what the righteous do? If they were smart with their wealth and their money and the blessings God gave in times of plenty,
right?
Just like we saw, like Daniel, kind of what he did, where he invested. I mean, there was really an investment process in this wicked culture. But if we could look ahead and go, hey, man, the foundations crumble, but the church is still strong. The people of God have their own institutions, their own hospitals, their own this. When all else fails, the church is still standing. Right. We are the society builders. If the society falls, it's our fault.
Right.
Now we're at the point where, yes, it is falling, but we can continue our legacy by blessing the church and by moving it on. So, all right, we'll leave it there. This was long, but that's okay. I'm sure we'll have
conversation.
More. Yes, we're gonna have more conversations on this because I think there's more avenues we can go on this. I love the fact that you're like not too far from me too. So it's really easy. In my little tiny
it's just
pub.
like a 10-minute drive for me.
Right, my $79 pub.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, I'll leave you there. I do have a tagline that I love at the end of all of these. I finish with a very simple sentence because at some point I always offend somebody in this, and I'm sure this is the last 10 minutes somewhere in there I offended some snowflake that's all upset and Yeah, you can melt yourself. But my tagline, one of my friends caught this from church, because I said it on my first one. I think it sticks and it's stuck, and I got to make a shirt with it here soon.
Oh,
so
nice.
if you're offended, go somewhere else, because I don't care.
Yeah.
That's reality. I don't care if I
Right.
offend somebody. It's not. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not here for you. I'm here for those who actually listen and hear. So if it was a blessing, again, go to his website, contact him, see if there's something you can bless your church with in the future, or a ministry. I'm just going to be prone to saying One Life for Life. I would love to see $1 million singing One Life for Life's thing, because man, we could have missionaries all across the United States at that amount of money. We talked when we talked before. I love this, because one of our things is we have red tents out in front of all the abortion mills.
Yeah.
Like you said, wouldn't it be great if Planned Parenthood all of a sudden one day saw a red tent out front? Oh crap, they're here.
These guys again.
They're here.
You can't get out of
How
that.
did they make it here?
Yeah.
Right? You know, that would be an awesome thing, because we save babies, and that's what we want to do. And that's always in my notes below is our website there,
That's
so you can
great.
give to it. Or even your church, or my church. I'm fine giving to my church. That's cool. I figure it's consider that a blessing. But either way, if you're offended, go somewhere else, because Mike doesn't care.
I don't
care. We don't give a rip. It's just the way it is. So thanks for, I guess, making it this far if you did.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, bro.